Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sabir, and I direct events here at the Strand, or as we say, so-called. But we are so happy to have everyone here with us tonight. Before we launch into a discussion of Lindsay's new book, Axiom's End, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until, after over 93 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Whiten. We want to thank all of you for your continued support. Without our loyal community of book lovers, authors like Lindsay and John, we wouldn't be here today, and we are so very appreciative of it. So, tonight we are excited to have with us Lindsay Ellis to celebrate the launch of her novel, Axiom's End. Lindsay is an author, Hugo finalist, and video essayist who creates online content about media, narrative, and film theory. After earning her bachelor's in cinema studies from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, she earned her MFA in film and television production from USC's School of Cinematic Arts with a focus in documentary and screenwriting. She lives in Long Beach, California, and Axiom's End is her debut novel. Joining Lindsay in conversation is fellow author John Scalzi. John is the author of several sci-fi novels, including his massively successful, best-selling Old Man's War sequence, comprising Old Man's War, The Ghost Brigades, The Last Colony, Zoe's Tale, The Human Division, and The End of All Things. His other novels include the New York Times bestsellers Lock-In, Fuzzy Nation, and Red Shirts. The latter won Science Fiction's Hugo Award in 2013. He also won a Hugo Award for Your Hate Mail Will Be Graded, a collection of essays from his popular blog, Whatever. So his most recent release is the New York Times bestseller, The Last Empress. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Lindsay and John to the stage.
Hello. There he is.
There I am. I would not abandon you this way.
Yeah, no, I was about to be like, well, I guess I can just do a tour of like my background. That is just my de facto thing now. You can see my
right
Phantom Bear.
You would be surprised, or perhaps not, how popular. Because I just did a long tour using the Crowdcast and Instagrams and all the other sorts of things of just how popular doing a tour of your workspace would be. People are like, tell me more.
This is where the thoughts happen. Like, yes, this is my inspiration. This is my inspiration. This virtual tour was brought to you by the good one, aspartame, the cancer taste.
Oh boy. Let me do a little bit of housekeeping here, because I'm going to be the person who is asking you questions, because it is your book that we are celebrating.
Yeah, the asker has become the askee.
That's right. Now it's on the other foot. So basically, what we're gonna do here is Lindsay and I are going to talk for 30-40 minutes or so, and then we are going to open up to the questions that you guys are putting into the little ask a question thing right here, and we'll do that for 15-20 minutes depending on how things go, and during the time that this is happening, just so you know, both in her case and mine, we may have domesticated animals show up. My cat will possibly end up draping herself this way across me, and you have dogs. So when that happens, don't panic.
Don't worry, they are domestic.
They are domesticated, right? Exactly. It's not. You saw that? Did you see the video of the woman who was she was taking a selfie, and a bear showed up and was just like hanging out with her, going like, "What's up?"
No, I didn't.
It's very popular on the Reddits these moments. So.
That's like my fourth least favorite. But before we dive in, also I want to take the time to thank everybody who is here for coming. It's we're making it work. It's a virtual event, but I feel privileged that you guys are, taking the time to come hang out with us over. It's not Zoom, it's Crowdcast. It's a whole new thing. So yeah, thank you for that. And I was supposed to be in New York today.
Right.
But yes, this is our like first bonding experience as authors. Is we had both our tours got canceled and we moved into the online.
That is absolutely true. I was just saying in the green room area that the way that I found out that my tour in April got canceled was I got an email from my editor while I was on a cruise liner. So it's like the COVID trifecta going on.
Mm-hmm.
And he really was like, you've got to call me. I'm like, I'm in the middle of the ocean. There are no cell phone towers. What is it? And he's like, you're canceled. And then immediately, it's not the canceled as in the internet.
I was about to say, like, you know what? I think it's time to talk about cancel culture. We're gonna be the brave ones to have those conversations.
Let's be truthful.
Hamilton is in this house. We like Hamilton. Hamilton is fine.
That's one I don't understand. They're like, it's like, did you know that the Hamilton is not 100%
Yeah, it's
accurate?
like, I'm gonna blow your mind, but did you know that George Washington owned slaves? Like, you're like, I don't know. It's weird to me because these are conversations that like we had in 2015 when it came out. But anyway, it's just like I could very easily go to, like just don't let me do this. Like we should just have a no Hamilton, just verboten.
I don't know if you know this, Lindsay, but everybody is here for the digressions. They want us to go.
So you guys are cool with me ranting about Hamilton for the next 45 minutes.
45 minutes already.
I keep getting called like, when are you going to do a Hamilton content? And I'm like, it would just be me on fire for an hour, just angry at the internet because people are wrong on the internet, and it bothers me.
What?
There's a guy that was wrong on the internet.
No, that never happened. That has never happened in the history of the internet ever. I don't know what you are absolutely talking about.
My life is really hard, okay? Like,
yeah. What's really great is we're going along, people like, yes, Hamilton, but no, Hamilton, more pets. I'm like, we have no control over the pets that come and go as they please.
I mean, I do because I have dogs. So they more or less do what you say. Yeah.
So debut novel.
Right. Yes, it's called Awoken. It's a love story. It was a fictionfun.com editor's choice.
The other one. The one that just got published today.
Yes, it's well. I'm missing the cover or the cover, but this is called The Consuming Fire. And it's the last. Oh, Nick, happy birthday! Here's the thing. Yeah. What's that?
I hear that guy's a real jerk. The Consuming Fire author. Don't trust him.
I thought you meant Nick. I was like, what?
No, I would never say that about Nick. Never. Okay, actually show your real book again.
I did. Okay, fine.
Do it again.
Here's the thing. I have to say, like, I feel like this looks like Brazil. This our apostrophe here.
It kind of does.
Yeah.
It kind of does. It's very random, but yes.
Yeah. That's something that's been on my. I need to get that off my chest.
Here's a fun thing, and I don't know if we can go anywhere with it, but I think it's kind of interesting. You and I actually have quite a number of things in common relating to our debuts as novelists, or at least the first novels that we.
Yeah, because you just kind of came off a film critic career.
Right. Exactly. So we both. We both have a history of film criticism. I worked for a newspaper in California, the Fresno Bee, and I was their film critic for about 5 years.
Did you live in Fresno?
I did live in Fresno.
Sorry. Oh, we gotta die.
No. You know, the thing is,
I was just there doing research for book 2. I'm like, oh my god.
I'm gonna give a minority report on Fresno here, which was. Back in 1991, which is when I got my job, because right out of college, I was a film critic. It was incredibly cheap to live in, and my job was watching movies for a living, and it was an actual job with health benefits and everything like that. So I was like, and And Fresno is actually really constructed like suburbia anywhere. Like I was
God.
driving there for the first time, and I was like,
So
I'm going to
flat.
turn. Yeah, I'm gonna turn here, and there's going to be a Vons. And of course, I turned, and of course, there was a Vons.
Vons, for those in like not is a California grocery chain. So
yes,
it's like
exactly.
on that, like mid. It's not as nice as Wegmans, but we don't have those here, so whatever.
Right, exactly. But so as far as I was concerned, I was living in someplace real cheap, and I got to watch movies for a living. And I was the only one of my friends who actually had a job at the time. So I would go to watch movies, and I would sometimes go to San Francisco or Los Angeles, and I would take my friends with me and take them to dinner on the corporate dime. And so I was the hero to all of my friends in graduate school.
Making it rain.
Right, exactly. So, but yeah, we both had that film experience, and both of our first novels, for Axiom and me for actually with Agents of the Stars, which was my second published but first written, take place in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of actual. It's all coincidental, but those are things that we have in common.
Yeah, and I guess there's Agents of the Stars has like a lot. There are parallels like throughout. Although I guess Agents of the Stars is a lot. I guess the word is cheeky, like like it's a very, very different tone.
Sure.
But like I think it does fall in line with the stuff that I think a lot about, which is like how do you deal with something that looks very inhuman and be in the same room with it. And so obviously that was something I thought a lot about and spent half the book on. So
right. Well, and also the idea, I think, particularly with the idea of Los Angeles area itself being a substantial character in the book.
Yeah. Right? Well, oh God, yeah. Because like the first, because I kind of I wrote it twice. In the first version, I think there's I have this thing that I struggle with where I'm like, if I arbitrarily pick a location, it really bothers me. And the protagonist, Cora, originally was in Topanga or the Valley, Tarzana or something. Sure. And for the life of me, I do not remember why I chose that location, other than I think there were maybe some wooded areas that we can run around in, but really not really. No, it's just all it's desert up. And it was just kind of a place that I didn't really know or have any connection to. And then apologies to Lisa, who they believe is in the chat, my sister-in-law. When I rewrote it, I decided I was going to set it in Torrance, which is an LA suburb, and that was where I was living at the time, because that was when I was finishing my master's degree. And it was just hellish, because it was I went back for spring semester 2017. So the election had just happened. And I was just like, you know what? Let's go be alone on the other side of the country. Sure, why not? So it was just I just kind of felt like that town, just it caught such a vibe of this, I don't know, immediate pre-crash, sure. Houses built on former oil wells, it just, I don't know, what the kids call a big mood. And there's nothing there but a mall. It's just there's a lot of LA cities that are like that. So I think it is kind of important when you're writing to make your settings a character, because the first version, it was just very arbitrary, and then it was kind of maybe not the most flattering portrayal of a city, but it was definitely a character.
Right. And I thought it was very important for me also, in the sense of, because for me it was the very first novel that I wrote. It was the same sort of thing. It was the take what you know and that you know and incorporate it into the thing. So I knew about Hollywood because I was doing film stuff, right? And I knew LA because I grew up in the area, in East San Gabriel Valley, which Los Angelinos will tell you that's not LA.
Yeah, that's like Azusa. No, it's Claremont, right?
Yeah, I lived in Azusa, I lived in Glendora, I lived in Claremont, I lived in Laverne, and I lived in San Dimas, home of Bill and Ted. So just basically the whole Eastern San Gabriel Valley, I've lived there. I've experienced Covina.
They have lovely reptile fairs some of the time. if we run out of things to talk about, I can go get us a tortoise and show you some of the lovely wares that Pomona has to offer at their incredibly huge fairground.
Yes, the Pomona Fairground.
The Pomona Fairplex. Get them spiders.
It is huge, but that's the whole point. Like, these are places that I knew, so I could incorporate them, and then it would be something that for me at least, when I was writing the first novel, and maybe talk about this a little bit, so much of the setting was trying to make it a little bit easy on myself to do stuff that I knew and had some experience with, so that when I was doing the difficult stuff, aliens and trying to bring that across, that I could devote more work to that and less work to the setting. Was this something that was on your mind too when you were?
Honestly, complete opposite, because I would stress over the real stuff because people, okay, sorry, Lisa, I'm going to drag you into this again. Okay, so both Lisa and my husband, who grew up in Torrance, there's a scene early on in the book that takes place in, I don't really name names, but it is, it's a real place. It's called the Madrona Marsh. And in real life, there is there's a fence around it, like a very large fence, because it's a nature preserve. And in the book, there's no fence because the plot needs there to not be a fence. And so it was like, when Nick read the first version of it, he was just like, there's a fence there, right? I'm like, yes, I know there's a fence. But she's like, well, there was a fence there in 2007. I'm like, I know. Don't worry about it. And then when Lisa read the 18th version, because she's read 6,000 versions of this, she's like, there's a fence there. And I'm like, I know there's a fence. And then it was just like, there also wasn't a Circuit City there. I'm like, I know the Circuit City was in Rolling Hills, but I wanted there to be a Circuit City because it's funny, because they're gone now. And it makes me lol. But stuff like that would kind of what worries me more, because people get kind of hung up on oh, you didn't do the research, or this it takes me out of it because I know it's wrong. Whereas when you're dealing with aliens, they're functionally fantasy creatures. You can do whatever, and even if you're wonky on science, it's just it doesn't matter, it's unless you're someone is here for really hard sci-fi, in which case you're gonna be disappointed. I would say Contact this is not, but I would also argue that it's kind of on the level of Contact. Contact is a little woo-woo.
It's a little it's context-esque.
Yeah. So stuff like that, I think, and one of the big, I don't want to say regrets, but I'm never doing this again, is choosing locations that I could not go to. Choosing locations that I could not visit and I couldn't really even research. You can't go to Langley. You cannot get into NORAD. After 9/11, you just, they used to give tours.
Right.
So, and so it was a really difficult thing trying to find even pictures or people who on Reddit who worked there, what's the layout, what's it look like, and because I wanted it to feel real, and that was one of the notes from my editors. He kind of wanted it to feel more like Dr. Strangelove, and I'm like, no, it's have you been in a military base? It's they all look like junior colleges. It's really lame and underwhelming, and I don't know. I like that juxtaposition of lame and underwhelming with big portentous stuff. Which is why we set it in Torrance.
Somebody was, as you were talking about the fence, someone was like, it's old history. That fence was never built.
Yeah, exactly. In that timeline, there's no fence. To which Lisa said, well, they got to keep people out at night. It's a nature preserve. It's okay, fine, whatever. I feel the fence, is there going to be a hashtag the fence? This is going to be there's going to be the big backlash against this book is going to be Fencegate.
Yeah, hashtag where's the fence? Well,
hashtag where's the fence? Hashtag no Circuit City at the Del Amo Mall.
Yeah, there's the old story about Larry Niven when he wrote Ringworld, and he went to MIT to go talk about it, and all the engineers there all the engineering people were like, Ringworld's unstable. And he'd be like, whatever. And then they started chanting, Ringworld is unstable, Ringworld is unstable. It's the same thing. Where is the fence? Where is the fence?
Show the fence. Like, okay, I guess, yeah, we could. I was like, I could contrive. Is it open? No, it wouldn't make sense. It's 6. It's kind of one of those things where it's only open during certain hours a day. It's like, guys, there's no fence. It's okay. But I think that's the thing. Like, I get hung up on that because, again, knowing my audience, people do get really pedantic, and it does make it kind of hard to work, like especially like on the YouTube side of things. Whenever I'm, that's why honestly it has taken longer and longer and longer to create or to do any one single video, is because we spend so much time like fact checking, and if you make a claim, you have to like go and go through like every permutation that could disprove it, and it just takes forever. And so I'm like, I don't know if that's a good thing, because but I do kind of approach fiction in the same way, like just assuming that people are going to pick it apart. But at the same time, it's like it's impossible to really think that way, because people, you can never imagine every single permutation, which is to say nothing about like the stuff that you're just ignorant about. Like maybe you did just get something wrong. Right.
Well, no, I mean, when these things, because I think about this too, in terms, because this is a world building question. It's like, how deep do you build your world? How many times do you check stuff? And I'm kind of famous for saying I build my worlds like 2 questions deep. Like, well, why did it happen this way? Well, because of this. Well, what if this happened? Well, and then I answer that. And then what about what else? And then I'm like, you have now gone 3 sigmas out. You are someone who is really devoted to this. And there's only 3 of you in the world. And so my usual answer to that is, you know what? That's going to be a question that might get answered in the sequel.
Yeah. Why did their eye color change? That's a sequel question. That's not a copy edit error.
So what we're saying is in the sequel to Axioms, and there will be a fence. It will be under construction at the time.
Yeah, they'll be like, wow, it's a good thing we put that fence there, because people were just running in and out of that nature preserve.
But it does bring up the question. I mean, you were talking about it in terms of YouTube, and we were talking about it in terms of fiction. But the real question is, how much do we as world builders owe readers when it comes down to how detailed we make these things, right?
I think that's a taste thing. I think were you the person that said that like there needs to be a lot of room for entry level science fiction,
Sure.
And I think people who are like genre curious, the type of person that reads Ready Player One, is, it's like, well, what are you here for? You might not realize you're here for super intricate world building, but in general, that's like maybe not the greatest place to start, because what do you, because I've seen like a lot of feedback on mine is like, people being kind of iffy on wanting to read it because sci-fi can be really dense, because a lot of science fiction readers really like intricate world building. And so I think it's a balancing act, and it's a taste thing, and it's knowing that you can't please everybody. And that is the one that I struggle with.
Well, but I think that's super accurate, though. I mean, it's like no matter what you write, no matter how detailed you make it or don't make it, no matter who you're trying to pitch it to or whatever, even within the realm of, it's like, I have created it for these 10 people. Of those 10 people, 2 of them are going to be like, why did you think this was going to be for me? And then 3 more are going to be like, and then maybe you'll get the 5 who are like, okay with it. And it's no matter what, as you say, you're just never going to please everybody.
Right. Yeah. I think it is something that I struggle with, because I when all the things I love best in the world, I do find extremely flawed. Like I think that is, whenever you really like something, then that's when you kind of get really into it, and then that's when you can really like even to bring the H word back, we just recorded we just recorded a podcast about Hamilton for my podcast, and for my podcast about musicals, and I was the person as like the Hamilton knower and the Hamilton lover with the most like, okay, so here's my problems with Hamilton. And it's just, like spend like 20 minutes on, what I don't, what I would change or what bores me or what like, I think drag. And it's weird being on the other side of that equation because I'm like, finding flaws in something does not preclude. I mean, I guess for some people it does. Some people are like, it's either perfect and good or I hate it, but I think for most people, like finding flaws in things does not preclude enjoying it. But like I spent so much time like fixing things and like trying to like please everybody that whenever people like find some flaw in it, I'm like, you're right, I failed. And not just not just like engage in the same way that like I engage with media that I really like.
Sure Well, and I think that is a struggle for everybody. You want to do a credible job of whatever it is you're doing. And it's also human nature of 99 people will be like, this is a great book. And that one person will be like, no, it really sucks. And then you'll be thinking about that one the time. This is actually where, and I think maybe you have a similar experience with that. Having been a professional critic, having been the person on the other side of the sausage grinder, was really helpful to me because I can literally think, no matter in film or television or books or music, no matter who it is that I love, right? I can always think of the one or two things that they've done where I'm like, that's not it, champ. That's really not it. And so for me, just the fact that the artists and creators that I love the most, who have spoken to me the most, who I really like the most, there have been stuff of theirs where not only did I not like it, but sometimes it was an actively like, I don't know where that came from. This is so non-representative. So that idea, knowing that as a critic, made it easier when on the flip side people were like, what the hell? All those 1-star reviews, right?
I wish I had that healthy an approach because I definitely have the like, the like meme of like the gifted children and because I am like, I am completely that guy where I was like, yes, I am like, I'm like gifted, which is nonsense, but that means they treat you differently, right? Like gifted and an only child, and like I think only in hindsight realize how like incredibly strict my parents were. I got a C one time in my entire life, and I was grounded for 6 weeks. I wasn't allowed to watch television. I was no phone, like nothing. I wasn't even allowed to watch. I think I was allowed to watch the news, but I was not allowed to watch television. So I, it's like, so I kind of carry that into adulthood, where it's like there is like this compulsion where it's like you just like knowing that logically, sometimes like even with like YouTube videos, it's like they can't all be winners, but there's still that like if I attach any emotional significance to a thing, then I definitely, it does bother me, this knowledge that like it isn't perfect or it's not perfect to everybody, and that's so like the meme of the gifted children is very true. And I say gifted, and like not like literally gifted, like just put in gifted. They take you out of class.
No, I got it. No,
so clear for people who are probably recording this.
When I was a kid, they were the MGM classes, the mentally gifted minors, which I thought
mentally
gifted
gifted is vague. Like mentally. Guys,
mentally gifted. I mean,
that sounds like some eugenics stuff.
I mean, it's really, it sounds like one of those really bad 1980s NBC TV shows, like like The Powers of Matthew Starr, followed by MGM, and a bunch of kids in Brainiac,
like they're all like genetically engineered, like in a lab, and like exactly. They don't know their secret past, but their heads are weirdly big,
and they all have the same bowl cuts. Or
they have like the rubber foreheads, like in Mystery Science Theater.
The good news is now I know what I'm going to pitch the next time I go out to LA to do TV show pitching.
Like pod children are all the rage right now.
They are though, but
like middle game. Have you like? I was like, I think I'm just like, I think Shannon's going to win this year, but it's definitely a pod children book.
Right, it's a pod or Umbrella Academy, or it's like these. What are superhero stories, but mentally gifted minors grown up, right? Because they're all screwed up.
Or sometimes just mentally gifted minors, like in the case of X-Men.
Right, exactly. So it's a thing. It's a moment. It's a mood. I want to talk about I want to talk about 2007.
Oh yeah, everybody. I think it's funny that people are kind of like zeroing in on that, but I kind of knew they would because it's like, you know, we're at that cusp where it's like we're about to go into that 2000s nostalgia cycle, but it's not something
Right.
people have really given a lot of thought to, other than reverse canceling George W. Bush, which is the
Right.
moment like it was like, oh man, we had it pretty good with that, you know, war and hundreds of thousands dead, like good content.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is an interesting moment.
Yeah. And I think you're right. It is. I thought it was kind of a masterstroke, honestly, because you were talking about the nostalgia cycle, right?
Mhm.
And the picking something that is
Oh no.
where they're like, you know, your readership was there in 2007, but they don't really think anything positive
Mhm.
or negative about it. It's just
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah, it's
And
go ahead.
no, please.
I think it's a particularly weird moment, and like the reason I picked it was because, you know, it was right before the crash, and also because I watched The Big Short about like 8,000 times while I was
I
writing
love
it.
that movie.
It was like, I hope that vibe is sneaking in. Like half of the soundtrack to The Big Short is on my Spotify playlist for the book. But like I loved the vibe, but not just the vibe, but the way they describe it. Like there's this line from Steve Carell talking about like you know, when he's walking down the street in New York, kind of like observing how everybody's just like kind of walking around like they're in some kind of Enya video, and like everybody's like, you know, and I think that is like, I forget who, but somebody kind of described that era as like kind of like shell shocked, and by extension kind of willfully like putting your head down, like just very resigned, which is part of why I did that video about like the protest music of like during the Bush administration. And yeah, it's just I don't know, it's a mood. And I think it was like the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Especially because I think it is like obviously, and that's kind of another reason why I feel kind of weird talking about like international editions and pushing that, because I'm like, it is a very tied to America like concept and story, like inexorably. Kind of in the
Sure.
way that I think of I think like just alien folklore is in general, like, and it is folklore, like, and I think it like other countries like think about it, but like in terms of like folklore and national identity, it's something that is very like tied in with the US, especially like the West Coast, and
Sure.
just going, especially like you go into the desert and it just, you know, it unmoors you from like, you know, where our primate ancestors evolved.
I do think you have a real point with it being a very an American story. And I think it's a really interesting time, both 2007 and now, to be telling American stories, because the American story right now is
could be better.
could be better.
Could be better. Yeah.
Could be better.
I found that I'm still finding it a challenge because obviously like this is the first in the series, and it's especially since it starts from a place where it's like even if the world wasn't better, it like felt more stable, at least here in the US. And it's kind of hard to write an alternate past that feels worse than what we're living through right now, you know?
Right.
But it's like all of those crimes, especially since it is so recent, it's like all of those like societal ills that are just, you know, festering now, like that was all still there. Like it didn't begin when Obama got elected. So like it, you know, it's I liked this idea that it was like far enough in the past that it didn't feel plausible that it would happen now, but like also, you know, that it's very within living memory and it does evoke emotions.
Right.
But hopefully not too distracting. I feel like I underused the setting, because like after the first few chapters, it's like, okay, like we're going underground now, we're going over here, we're running around, don't really have much opportunity for like, you know, Fergie references.
Right. Well, but I mean, scene setting is scene setting, right? You don't want the tail wagging the dog. You did actually have a plot and story to get to.
Right. Yeah. because that like I said, it didn't originally, because like when I originally conceived it, it was like 2013, 2014, and it was in that way that I feel like most books are like set in the present, like sort of like the nebulous now.
Sure.
And that was like, for your friend and mine, Hank Green, like a problem with his because like he wrote it before the first one, before Trump got elected.
Right.
And it's again like this weird genre of fiction that was built for a world that is not the world that ended up happening. And so it was like, well, either we can acknowledge that or we can just have a mildly alternate reality. And that was what he went with, and kind of has like this nameless female president.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was sort of after that happened, it like, I kind of went the other way, where I was like, I liked this idea of being like really grounded, like just like, no, this is like the realness, except for the fence. But then the consequences, then you have like,
tag fence.
Yeah, but then the consequences, like you have you real characters, like real world people who like end up being characters in the book, like Secretary of Defense Robert Gates. And it was like, I did not have that character, that guy in mind when I wrote it, but that's ended up being what happened because of the decision to be like, no, we're going full reality. That's what's going on. We've also lost your camera, by the way.
My camera, but you can still hear me, right?
I can still hear you just fine.
Okay, so wait a second, so I can do this, and
so I'll just.
Okay, well, I mean, I can, as long as I have voice, then everything should be fine. But I think you actually pegged something that is really difficult about the writing science fiction, or writing basically anything that takes place in contemporary time, because time catches up with you. The person, I know Charlie Strauss, who writes science fiction, has had several books where he's literally had to like tear them up and start over because the weird, freaky idea that he had not only caught up with him, but ran past him.
Right? Yeah. It's like, oh, this is like, or it's like it becomes problematic or something, like where it's like when you came up with it, it was fine, but then like it became gauche because context changed.
Right, and it is troublesome. To go back to Agents of the Stars, my problem with Agents of the Stars now is that it has no reference to anything that's going on in the world now. The way that I put in a preface, I updated it in like 2008, and I was like, I'm not updating it anymore. So we just all assume that this branched off sometime in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
This is an alternate history. This is what it worked out for.
Yeah, it's like what happened in the early 2000s that was like a crucial turning point in human history.
Yeah. We're at the 41-minute thing, and we have 51 questions.
Yes. Oh wow, start getting confused. I guess find the ones that are interesting to you.
All right, let's swing through.
So he since he's the daddy, he's in charge of the questions. So.
Genre daddy.
Yes.
No,
all of daddies.
so yesterday she was promoting this. She's on her video. She's like, internet, John Scalzi, science fiction writer, and genre daddy, and I'm like, the fuck? I was not ready to be called genre.
Not ready to be inducted to the Hall of Daddies.
Yeah, the Hall of Daddies. I did not know, which is the name of my next band, by the way.
Hall of Daddies. Yeah, we kind of like, because like that's another joke that we have on the podcast is we'll talk about characters and like, is Hades from Hades Town a daddy? Definitely. And then it was like with the Hamilton discussion, it's like, well, obviously George Washington is the daddy. And it's just like, well, it's a good thing. Like daddy was a little pejorative for a little while. Like, that was like a joke we had. Like I keep calling Elon Musk daddy on Twitter. But then it just, it stopped being pejorative. It's like started being like an affectionate thing again. So I think at this point in history, being called a daddy is not a bad thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's a question for you to be thinking forward in the future. If your series gets a dedicated fandom, are there things you are expecting, hoping for, or dreading in how that fandom will engage with your writing? And that comes from Thomas.
Oh, I mean, the dread is like the dread in every fandom, because fandom is a fucking mess right now. Like it's just a nightmare place where like because it was all, there's always like infighting and like canceling each other for social clout, which is just absolutely a thing. And I feel like, because people say that cancel culture isn't real, it's totally real, and it's most of it happens like on very low levels, where there'll be like a community or like a fanfic community, and then like somebody will I don't know, like the example I used recently was Beetlejuice, where I think I said something to the tune, I'm like, it doesn't bother me if people write fan fiction where Beetlejuice and Lydia are together. I'm like fine, whatever. Yeah, it's like again the problem there is like she's underage, and my attitude is
Sure.
It's fan fiction. I don't care. And a lot of people got really upset by that. So I think the danger with fandoms is like whenever fandoms happen, like then come the subcultures, and then come the ship wars, and then they start blaming the creator for their weird bullshit. So I think that dark side of fandom, and I think is very reflective of the fact that these people that kind of start these subcultures and fights, they don't have a lot of power in the real world, and that's why they tend to exert it over frivolous stuff like, is it immoral to write Beetlejuice fanfic with underage Lydia? Like, and then that becomes the biggest issue in the world, because you can't really exert power over like Ben Shapiro. So yeah, that would be in the unlikely event that it gets like a big enough dedicated fandom that there's like shipping wars, like that would be that like, oh no, like oh no. But yeah, I imagine there would be a lot of shipping, especially once we get into later books where there's like more characters and you can do that.
Sure. Book 6, by that time you will have an entire ecosystem ready for you to go.
Yeah,
although
I think a measure of weird interspecies ships, you guys can just pick and choose like Legos. What were you saying?
I was about to say, next question. Yusuf asks, what was your writing process in terms of plot? Did you write the lore and characters and then figure out where the story was going, a la George R.R. Martin? Or did you have a particular story in mind that you absolutely wanted to tell and then develop the universe around it?
God, I don't remember. It was so long ago. I guess the truth
isn't it true though? It's sort of like it's the answering questions to things that you were writing 4 years ago. Sometimes it's like, wait, I don't remember.
I know like it was like characters first, because I like the central basically it was like this. The plot is the contrivance of getting the central relationship together and having a dynamic. But the second book, which is coming out next October, was the one I came up with first. And because that one is like, I guess like low-key spoilers, but like that one is the one that is actually about like society having to cope with the fact that first contact happened, but nothing really changes. The world doesn't really end. We still have an economy. We still have to get on with it. So like, it's just more with humanity having to sit with this like existential question, and but not having anything tangible to react to, a la Independence Day, where it's, like, oh, we had to fight it. It's like, no, it's way more boring than that. But like the result is, still kind of chaotic, because people do be chaotic whenever scary things happen.
Right.
So that was the first one I came up with, but then like, so I needed to set up, and that's like, so the first book, which is the one that Axiom's End, like I conceived almost as like setup for this question. So and also for our two leads to meet each other and have adventures. So that, to my memory, is how it happened.
Right. There are so many questions here about fans and fandom, and
I know a thing or two. I've seen some stuff.
You've seen some stuff. About all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm going to skip over most of them and try to get some varied ones, and then we can go back to look at some of the fan questions if we want. But I asked this a little bit earlier.
Questions, if there are some that are interesting, but go ahead.
Okay. I asked this in a very sort of in the way that related to both of us, but we didn't go into it in detail. So how do you think your film background affects your process and style as an author? Because I know for me, it absolutely does.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think like you and I can have similar writing styles in that they're so, I don't want to say utilitarian, like very like, okay, let's keep going, go. Like, you know, like, all right, let's keep it moving, you know, like, don't want to sit with one thing for too long like that. And I don't know, that's a taste thing. It's not a judgment.
Right.
And so I definitely, and this is something I've noticed, like in actual formal writing classes, people tend to have been taking inspiration from like screenwriting more. Like people teach Save the Cat, like stuff like that. And so definitely like the fact that I focused on screenwriting when I was in grad school. Definitely. I mean, like you can see it in my channel whenever I talk about like structure and like act structure and motivation and stuff like that. Like having that is helpful whenever you're like trying to form a like I guess the skeleton of the thing. Because I think that's especially like coming at it as a critic. To me, I'm like it doesn't really help when you're actually coming up with ideas and like being kissed by the, you know, wind of inspiration like that. It doesn't really help. But, you know, from a revision standpoint and from a like taking the massive clay and turning it into something like readable, like it definitely helps there.
Right.
And also like I mean it's pretty fucking obvious that like when you read the book you're like, okay, like this is inspired by basically every like alien thing that came out in the 90s and 2000s. You know,
Sure.
So there's a lot of direct references to some, like, you know, Independence Days in there a lot. Like War of the Worlds. I forgot how much Invader Zim kind of sneaked in there.
Love Invader Zim.
Well, you were the only person that laughed whenever I described it as Mary Doria Russell's Invader Zim, and you're the only person who got that joke. I was like, somebody got it.
I mean, but the thing is you kind of do have to run straight smack into that. Like it's the same thing when I was doing Red Shirts and also Agents of the Stars. She's like, you cannot avoid the fact that your audience knows all of this stuff. You can't just pretend that it doesn't exist. This is the one massive change that has happened in like zombie, vampire, all this sort of stuff in the last, you know, decade and a half is that they know nobody pretends anymore that people don't know what zombies and vampires and werewolves are. You know, the same sort of thing is everybody assumes that everybody else is genre literate now. And if you don't, then you've created an artifact that's so weird that it just rejects people out.
Yeah.
So, well, since this is a fandom question, but it is a slightly complex one and it's got multisyllabic words in it, which I'm very impressed with. So I'm going to go with it. As you've gained popularity, how have you dealt with the juxtaposition of meeting people you previously had parasocial relationships with, and how has that changed your view of parasociality in general?
I feel like one of the best pieces of advice I ever saw, and I didn't get it. I'm pretty sure it was from Hank, and it was on Twitter like 4 or 5 years ago. And what he said was like, don't try to be friends with the people you admire. Like it was doomed to failure. Like be friends with your peers and elevate your peers, and thereby you will, you know, rise each other and elevate each other. And in time, if an organic, you know, relationship is to occur, then it will, once you are kind of at that level where you can have these interactions. And that has absolutely been my experience. You know, I think whenever people kind of set out like, I'm going to be this person's friend, like it's just completely doomed to failure.
Right.
And it's because it's also kind of fake. It's like you don't know them. You know the version of them that they see on the internet, but like you can't like see someone on the internet and be like, we would be good friends, because you don't know that. Like you don't know what like what your actual chemical interaction would be in the real world, because you're only seeing a curated version of them in the real. But I can't say that like, you know, absolutely, I have developed friendships with people that I kind of had like a low key pair. You know, I think you're one of them. Like I've been reading your stuff since the OOs, like back in the ancient times, and like Like,
well, I remember one of the very first times that we ever met. I think it was the first time that we ever met was at the LA. Was it the Algonquin?
Yeah, it was the Algonquin.
Yes, it was. But like the second time was the LA Times Festival of Books, because you had done a review of Lock-In.
No, it was the Brooklyn. That was the fan fiction thing.
Right.
You had it was the Brooklyn the Bell House where you were doing that.
The Watchmen fan
yes,
fiction.
yes, the Watchmen fan fiction with
right.
yeah. So,
okay.
Yes, because like, I remember you talking like, I was interested in your criticisms.
But it was because your criticisms were on point because it was relating to the question of
mostly about
the
gender
of the request. Yeah. It was, and so it was really interesting to me because that was one of those things where it's like I'm too close to it to know. And I thought your points were cogent. Chrissy, by the way, was like, no, she's wrong. But that's
I'm glad she
forgave
me eventually.
yeah. It's going to be between you and her. But your point to the curated versions of people was one of the reasons that I have always been, to the extent that when I had the blogs and when I was doing the Twitters and everything like that, I am always super clear to people that you are getting a curated version of who John Scalzi is, and this version is tuned for social media. It is very outward performing, it's very friendly, it's all this sort of stuff, but it's not a lie. All of those things exist in my makeup, but they're just tuned absolutely different. And I always make sure that when people meet me, they're like, that they understand that, you have seen one version of me. If you see me at an event, you're seeing another event. And even what we're doing now is a third event.
Because I have had people like follow me like with this like physically like in event spaces where they like there was a VidCon where like the lines of fan and creator are very rigid, and they do that because they have these like featured creators that are like really, really big. And so it's kind of a necessity thing. And I've had it happen where people would just kind of flagrantly ignore those boundaries in order to because they thought, oh, we're friends, we're going to hang out. And it's like, no, like we've interacted, we've collaborated once or twice, but that doesn't make us friends. And I've definitely had, where it's like, I didn't want to have to do this, but where you have to like set boundaries because people mistake collaboration for friendship,
Right. Now I've had the thing where people have done the thing of you're coming to town, and I know we don't know each other, but you can totally stay in my basement.
Well, I know you are strapped for cash, so that's really cool.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and it's been and the thing that I always say is like it's like I understand why you're doing this, and I understand the place that you are coming from is a giving place and is a friendly place, and that you absolutely did not mean to absolutely fucking creeping me out right now. But in fact, this is where I'm like, I'm not gonna come and stay in your basement and I
don't wake up with your tongue in my ear. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like I said, it's never, and once you point it out, they're like, oh yeah, you're right. That was really super creepy. Yeah. And I really apologize for that. But that, like you said, it's the having to make sure that people understand the line. I think people
become really enamored with the idea of like a friendship, and then they kind of like, then they start to role play it, and that's where it gets a little yikesy. Because like that's another thing. It's like honestly kind of difficult. Is like once your platform gets to such a level, you kind of have to impose boundaries that don't really feel natural because that's not really how people interact, but it does become kind of a necessity. And a lot of times I feel bad about it because it's not like people did anything wrong, but it'll be like will have to be careful to not respond to like if there's someone that I like follow on Twitter, but maybe they tweet at me too much, I'll have to like, not respond to them, and then I'll have to like I'll have to unfollow them, or a lot of times I've just had to mute people because they just won't shut up. And if it gets really bad, I have to block them. It's like, we are not friends. We're not friends.
Yeah. it is a thing, and you do have to achieve the balance. And you're absolutely right, because you do want to be friendly, and you do want to have those, actual human moments. And it is one of I've had a number of friends who have elevated to the point where they can't go to conventions anymore. If they're a small convention, they can't go to the small convention because they will swamp the place. And if it's a large convention, they can't walk the floor of the convention because then nobody can move, right? And I've always been sort of happy. And it sounds really weird, it's it's in the Aldous Huxley, the betas are the best. No, the gammas are the best. But it is the sort of I'm happy that I'm popular, but I am just below the level where I can't walk a floor anymore.
Yeah. I'm there too, and I kind of where I'm at right now. I'm like, you know what? This is good. This is fine. I would let's see. Yeah, I think we're good. After that, it's maybe not worth it. But anyway, so moving on.
Well, and actually that is it is now about time where we have to close it out.
No, I think we have another. Yeah, we have another 5 minutes because we started late.
Yeah, no, I have it as 8:04, and we started at 7:05.
Oh, I'm looking at the. Okay, never mind. I was looking at the little do hammer on the lower left hand.
Yeah,
so
it's the 50. Yeah, no, that is saying we are coming up to the last minute. So you have the last minute before we have the wander through. And so anything you want to say really quick before we have our wonderful Strand person say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah, just thank you guys for coming. If you and for bearing with the technical difficulties. I hope my Beetlejuice fan fiction opinions weren't too saucy, weren't too spicy. Thank you guys. I hope you like the book, and also be sure to, if you haven't, check out John's book. Is the third because let's see, because it's number 3 in a sequence. I'm going to steal that, sequence.
The interdependency sequence. There's mine.
Yeah. So The Last Emperor just came out in April, and we're doing another event in the beginning of August together to, I guess, do a we're promoting each other's books. So if you enjoyed the shenanigans today, please join us at Kepler Bookstore. I think it's on August 4th. And thank you guys so much for coming. And I hope we're gonna get through this. And maybe next year I'll see, because we were supposed to do one in person.
Right, exactly.
Next year. Cincinnati, bookstore in Cincinnati is okay, we'll have you.
Anyway, all right. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys so much for a great discussion, and thank you everyone for showing up tonight. If you don't already have a copy of Axiom's End or The Last Emperor, please feel free to order it from strandbooks.com, and have a great night.
All right. Good night. Bye.